Hello, welcome to another video. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is about the topic and the theory that we are all going to die. Now, this theory sounds a little bit sad and depressing, but obviously it's the truth, and we can look at it in two different ways. One group of people will look at it in the sense that you only live once. You should do things in a kind of a dramatic and exciting and I suppose living your best life kind of a way. So that means when you're young to do all the crazy things you've ever wanted to do, while keeping in mind that you are going to die at some point in your life, and that you might as well have gone through all the experiences that you wish to do through your entire life. Now, this is kind of obviously has its negatives and its benefits. You will live a life that you're proud of, or you have no regrets in the sense that you've done things that you might normally be scared of doing. You've done things that are exciting and that have given you benefit in the short term. Whereas then the other theory would be you are going to die, but you're going to want to die as late as possible and in the best condition as possible, with I suppose the least amount of suffering along the way. And I think you need to find a place in the middle. So not where you're just doing a really boring robotic lifestyle where you're literally just sticking to rules of eating healthily and never leaving the house basically other than for exercise and not doing anything adventurous, etc., etc. Whereas the complete polar opposite is doing all the crazy things you wanted to do when you're young, and then you completely neglect your physical health, your mental health, and you end up in a place where you literally are 10 years older physically than you are in age. So for example, if you've gone through your 20s and teens drinking a lot of alcohol and eating a lot of bad food and not doing exercise, not going to the gym, then you could be by the time you're 30 you could have a body of a 40-year-old, etc., etc. So age isn't necessarily limited to just the years. There's a lot of people who look a lot older than they are or look younger than they are, and this is in my opinion quite strongly correlated to how you live. So I think it's very important to remember that you are going to die, because if you kind of forget about this, you kind of see life as this mundane kind of trajectory where you don't need to push yourself to do anything interesting. It's in the same way that you might think, oh, when you're on your deathbed, you should be able to look back and look at the good things you've done and not see regrets, but see things that you've done well and done positively, while also realizing you didn't push anything too far or risked your long-term existence on the planet, basically. So I think somewhere in the middle is perfect. So if you can keep in mind that yes, you want to do things that are adventurous, that are exciting, that you can be proud of, but also keep in mind you want to be able to do those things for as long as possible. And this comes back to the kind of constant progression graph. So this graph where instead of going up and down in kind of choppy ways, as in you have a really good time, the next day you're depressed because you have a dopamine crash because you used some sort of substances the night before, whether that's alcohol or whatever. That's kind of the graph you want to avoid. That's the graph where people say you only live once. You should do all these things. Do them now in your 20s, in your teens. Do them straight away, and have no regrets. But they kind of neglect the long-term thinking. Whereas the other graph is this kind of constant progression where you're doing something that excites you, and then you don't. But because it's kind of manageable and it isn't totally extreme and isn't bad for you in the sense that it's a bad substance, you don't crash down the next day. And therefore you're kind of are always growing and growing and growing in a graph like this. Like I showed in my constant progression, constant progress video a while back. And yeah, I think that theory is very important to keep in mind, especially if you're doing anything that takes a while to get good at. It's a bit like the compound effect. So going to the gym on day one, you might feel like you're not making any progress, but after 100 days you've made a lot of progress, and that'll kind of compound and get better and better over time, while negating the effects of aging, negating the effects of becoming immobile, becoming weaker. So again, important to keep in mind that we are going to die, but you want to make that journey as smooth through life as possible, as wonderful as possible, and make sure that you maintain your autonomy in all ways for as long as possible. So you want to make sure you are having your adventures, but also that you are maintaining yourself and keeping yourself at the best standard that you can be at. I listened to an interesting documentary the last day where they're talking about how muscle mass, I suppose you lose muscle mass from age 30, 40 onwards at a particular rate. And if you don't do any exercise. So if I were to do no more exercise for the rest of my life, no more resistance training, no more gym, I would keep all the muscle that I've built up till now. So any muscle that I have, that I've gotten in the last 20 years, I would maintain until I'm about 30. And from there you lose about maybe 1% per year. It kind of gets faster and faster the older you get. But the interesting point was you might lose 1% of muscle mass, but you lose 2 to 3% of your strength per year without any training. That was really interesting to me. So muscle mass isn't directly correlated to strength. You could have, one guy could have as much muscle as, let's say me, for example, the muscle that I have, but they could be 3 times stronger than me because they've been training in a different way and for longer. In the same way that I could have the equal muscle mass as someone else, and then I start losing that muscle mass, and my strength starts deteriorating a lot quicker too. So you need to be able to continue training. You need to be able to develop the mindset that training is something you're going to do for your entire life. And that's why I've always said it's very important not to go too hard in the gym too quickly so you burn yourself out and get bored of the gym. You must think of it as a long-time, lifetime hobby. Something that you enjoy doing. So you never want to go to the gym with the feeling you have to go to the gym. So you're always thinking, well, I'm going to die eventually. That's true. I mean, I could die tomorrow and get hit by lightning. But before that, I'm going to make sure I'm in the best position possible so I can enjoy my life and do what I can for myself and for my friends and for my family and people I love. So I'll be there for them. I'll be mobile. I'll be able to be, looking after myself as well as looking after them for as long as possible. And this is one of the parts of the Good King topics in the Royle mindset is being there for your people as much as for yourself. And you can't be there for your people if you can't look after yourself in general. So you want to kind of avoid this situation where you've been in your 20s and teens and 30s saying, oh, I'm going to die, you only live once, I'm going to do all these crazy things. But then by age 40, you're already starting to be quite unhealthy, and by age 50, you almost already need nursing care. And I know this is true for a lot of people because I have friends who have relatives who are in this position. And I have a few friends my age who say they don't want to necessarily live into their later years. And I know they kind of said it as a joke, but they kind of meant it too. I was talking about a lady who had died in Japan. She reached 120, and I was saying, isn't it amazing that we can now reach 120 with modern, I'll say modern medicine, but also like there's less diseases going around. We've got better nutrition, all these things. I said, isn't it amazing that we can all get to 120? And they said they didn't really want to reach 120 because they felt that they would be in very poor health at that point, and they already felt they were in poor health already. And these guys were 22, 23, 24, 25, so they were super young. And if they already have that mindset, then that's going to be very difficult to reach an old age in a good state. And the mindset is super important. I've talked to you about a study before done in Miami where they asked older people, they had just retired, people who had just retired, they asked them how they felt about retirement. And they described it in 2 ways, either negatively or positively. So the negative crowd would have said, oh, I'm retired now, I'm going to be so lonely, I won't have work, less income, I'm going to be bored, nobody's going to care about me. Those people died on average about 7 years earlier than people who said that retirement was going to be about freedom, about exploring the world, about not having to work as much, about being able to enjoy their time. So the way they thought about it was hugely impactful. A bit like the placebo effect. So if I'm 21, as I am, and I think, life ahead of me is going to be so hard, I'm going to hate working, I'm going to hate studying, I'm going to hate being, older, I'm going to hate retirement, then super high chance I'm going to die younger and in poor shape and, probably obese, etc. Whereas if I believe I'm very lucky to be alive to begin with, I look forward to my years ahead of me, I'm very grateful for the years I've had behind me, and in general, I'm just very super privileged to be living in the first world, super privileged to know all the things that I know, all the theories that I've developed and have been given to me over time, then I believe, I'll have a much higher chance to live a longer, healthier life. And this is true for everyone, in my opinion. Now, I don't know too much about the placebo effect in terms of studies, but I have read a bit about it. But I certainly know that mindset is super important. So if you can develop the positive mindset, then yeah, you will die eventually, but it's going to be a good journey getting there. Then whatever you believe in after that, in the afterlife or whatever, or if you believe in nothing, doesn't completely matter because you've lived a very good existence up to that point, and you've put yourself in a good position, you've enjoyed your life, and you've made the most of it. I think this idea that, we are lucky to be alive doesn't really get talked about at all. I never hear anybody mention it really, unless they've been through like a life or death situation in movies, and they're suddenly, see the world through different eyes, different perspective. But we are super lucky to be alive. Just the idea of existing is a super privileged concept to me. And especially to live in the first world, for me, is super amazing. But even to live in the third world is an amazing experience too. If you have people around you who love you, if you're able to make the best of things, then that's a bit amazing also. I always talk about this documentary I saw about farmers in Kenya who had a lot less than I have. They've had a lot less security, a lot less, I suppose, personal wealth, you could say, a lot less infrastructure where they lived, but they were such happy people, at least in the documentary. I can't speak for Kenyans. I'm just saying just what stuck with me when I watched it. They were so grateful for everything. And this is just the best way to be. There are definitely correlations with in Western society, as we get richer, the population gets kind of sadder, more depressed. I think they talk about like the Scandinavian countries have the highest happiness rate, but they also have or highest satisfaction rate, I think is what the index is called. But they also have a super high suicide rate apparently. So just because we're richer doesn't mean we're happier, unless we can remind ourselves how lucky we are to be alive. And this is what I take from the Kenyan farmers I watched in this documentary, was they just seem to be so grateful for like every little thing, and they seem so happy. And if our societies get sadder and more depressed the richer they get, then it's a really difficult and unfortunate situation, in my opinion. It seems very silly and very counterproductive. So we got to remember how lucky we are to be alive. Yes, we will die, but that's more of a reason to kind of be motivated and to do things while we can, and be able to do them well for as long as we can. So that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to be back with you in another couple of days.